Kole, to the World XP podcast. This is episode number 26. It's a pleasure to have you on. I've seen you on LinkedIn. Seems every time like I turn around, you're involved in a new project somewhere in the space industry somewhere, which is quite remarkable, really, because most, well, I'll say normal people, but most people, when you think about space, you'll hear Elon tweet, watch a SpaceX launch, and then you'll just go back to your day. But you are right in the middle of it. So welcome.
Thank you, Eric. Really glad to be here and be speaking with you today. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah, for sure. It should be a good one. So you have been in the space industry for probably what, four or 5 years now? Is that accurate?
Yeah, coming on 5 years in everything involved in space technology and exploration. Could elaborate more on my career and what how I got into all this craziness.
Yeah, for sure. Because that's not something that I think most people, or not most people, but people who are interested in it kind of either they think about it and they're like, oh, that would be cool. But then they think they don't know the avenue to get into it, or they think maybe the only way is to either be an astronaut or like an engineer or something. And engineering schools, especially for like aerospace engineering, is quite difficult. And so they kind of will go, oh, I'll go do something more realistic. But you didn't do that. So what got you interested in it in the first place? And then how did you sort of make your way into the industry?
Yeah, it's a wonderful question, and it's that quote from Steve Jobs really resonates here in terms of you can connect the dots looking backward in in time from the present. I believe it stems from 4 or 5 culminating experiences. Uh, the first one being a internship the last 2 years in college with you
Mhm.
at Mary Washington, um, uh, developing a imaging satellite radar constellation at a company called Trident Space. And so that was these satellites were kind of like a stepping stone toward the greater becoming involved in the space ecosystem. And I um, graduated a little early, around December of 2017, and uh, but before then, there was also another experience. That was a study abroad in Bilbao, Spain. Uh, that was spring of 2017, and um, that was really fueled by this passion for adventure and um, something deeper in life. And so that really sparked this passion for travel and exploration. And so I found myself on a plane shortly after college, destined to, you know, live and work abroad in Singapore for a few months. Uh, and I didn't really know anyone over there, and I didn't have really much work aligned, but I was fortunate enough to be supported by my parents. Um, and I realized while I was over there that the greater reason was to go explore, and so I just started traveling, right? And I just uh, would bounce around to all these beautiful countries in Southeast Asia, and I developed this uh, really got into motorcycling over there, and um, it's kind of initially sparked from this 1,000 kilometer trip through the western coast of Italy on these massive motorcycles that I was convinced we would just like total myself. And so I uh, wound up riding 10,000 kilometers on a motorcycle throughout 10 countries in Southeast Asia. And, I rode through, I've seen some, rode through a lot of chaos in the streets, and a lot of, you know, borderline, I don't know, dangerous situations, a lot of very close calls, and several crashes. I'm lucky to, be here having this conversation with you. Yes. Um, and I guess that I was on a journey and became inspired to launch a nonprofit over there after really experiencing a deeper side of humanity and all the poverty over there. And I was kind of wound up with this lifelong passion for philanthropy and giving back. Um, and while I was over there, I had a lot of time to conceptualize my thoughts. And I was in the bathroom of this Vietnamese airport. Um, and I just was pacing back and forth for like an hour or two about like really like what do I want to do with my life, and so it was at that moment I decided to commit to starting Frontier Space, and I really launched a space research organization and podcast, um, and that was kind of after like motorcycling under the stars and kind of realizing that 90% of what I was reading was about space and to support life and the expansion of life throughout our solar system. Um, and so it's primarily a podcast now, and it's been operating for around 1.5 years since 2019. Go check it out. We a lot of really interesting concepts that are revolutionizing life on Earth and in um, uh, around us beyond Earth. Um, and yeah, so those were a few of the experiences that really compelled me toward this deeper dive, and dedicate significant amounts of my career.
Definitely. I feel like most of the people that I talk to on here have had some sort of traveling experience, or they've been like abroad somewhere, or somewhere like way out of their comfort zone. Like for me, I bring this up probably like every other podcast. Nah, that's not true. But I spent like 3.5 weeks in South Africa, traveling the country. And so that was one of the things that I wouldn't say it's inspired this, but it's like sort of underlying for why I started the podcast, to like, so I could expose or bring to light some of the more interesting stories that people wouldn't often get to hear. So from your perspective, traveling throughout Southeast Asia, I'm sure besides the close calls and dangerous stuff, I'm sure you met a lot of cool people, saw a lot of cool things. Um, and it's always, I encourage people whenever people ask, 'cause I encourage people to travel all the time, just like experience other things. It's like, because there's no substitute for that. Like you can look at a picture on Google, but until you're really there, it's not really the same. So you mentioned your nonprofit. I think it is called Journey, Frontier Journey. Is that correct?
The Journey Foundation, yes.
Journey Foundation. That's correct. Okay. So you started that when you were in Southeast Asia, and so what sorts of, like when you started that, what was your vision for that?
Yeah, our vision is to really enable humans around the globe to embark on these exceptional, uh, I like to call them volunteer missions,
Mm-hmm.
to support a philanthropic cause that they're passionate about, but that something that really pushes their physical and mental limits. And most of our journeys are currently focused on motorcycling long distances or cycling long distances, but it could be also like walking thousands of miles or kilometers through mountains to support the climate, or our other co-founder just recently motorcycled I don't know, it's like 3,500 miles across the U.S. Um, Jack Harmon, he's a great guy, and he's out there on an adventure, and he's enjoying life. Um, Although he wasn't necessarily supporting a philanthropic cause on this journey, but he has this vision to drive down to the tip of South America after Cabo, Mexico, and so he's on his way.
So
And
are you guys like raising money while you're doing this, and then you donate to a cause that you guys have that either means something to you, or somebody has hit you guys up and say, hey, like, would be really great if you guys were able to raise money for XYZ. Is that kind of how that works for you guys?
yes, that's the plan, in that we would support the local people that were um, traveling through their country. We would support them, and I'm really passionate about building a school down there in South America sometime, possibly in Peru. Um, and yeah, really enabling societies in rural areas to significantly improve their quality of life, um,
Gotcha.
with the support from our community and our
Well, hopefully you get to build that school at some point.
yeah
That
yeah
would definitely be. I'm sure
yes.
they would like it. Um, so you mentioned the other thing you mentioned was Frontier Space, which is now a podcast. So when you started it, because I think when we were talking earlier, it wasn't meant to only be a podcast. It was meant to be sort of a research organization. And oftentimes you need money to do that. And so you left Trident Space where you were, and you kind of, I guess, jumped into the deep end, didn't you?
Yeah, the deep self-funded uh you know non-salary based entrepreneurial journey,
Mm-hmm.
borderline homeless, but not really, because I'm fortunate and white. um but yeah, the vision for Frontier Space is to really become a space accelerator and research organization that um that helps pass on the knowledge gained over a lifetime, and enables the network that I've built and the people around me to really fund their research, and entrepreneurship to accomplish these like insane uh, space missions, like establishing um, like innovative products in the Venetian clouds, or
For
some
those listening, real quick, what are the Venetian clouds?
um, a lot of people consider that region in our solar system to be the second most habitable area. It's the upper layer of the Venus atmosphere, um, and we've got a lot of the conditions to support life. And so later in time, in this century, there will be these massive floating cities that will support humans and life, and then yeah, and then we'd also like to help directly, uh, uh, empower the research from our community and others, to establish that fundamental research, to enable um, technologies and products to be affordably operated and designed, on the moon, Mars, and in orbit, and the asteroid belt, and all over. So
Mm-hmm. So are you guys doing more like knowledge transfer then, I guess, rather than the actual, I don't want to say you're not doing actual research, but it's more knowledge transfer really, or like knowledge preservation almost.
yes, yeah, we currently promote underrated, like space areas and topics, and people who are really doing some interesting stuff, and yeah.
That sounds good. So you mentioned floating cities. And so for people who would say, oh, yeah, okay, that won't happen for like 500 years or whatever, what sorts of strides has. Also, one thing I wanted to ask you before I finish that question, you said ecosystem. You used that word specifically regarding the industry. What sort of connotation does the ecosystem have versus industry, or why did you use that word in particular?
Yeah, I think I like the word ecosystem because it involves all of the life that's contributing toward the development of an aspect of society or area um, in this star system. Um, and but when I refer to like ecosystem, I usually mean like a localized region of life and technology that's like contributing toward one mission and yeah.
Gotcha, gotcha. All right. So, in the ecosystem or the industry, what sort of strides have you seen that makes you believe that we're not that far away from a floating city or getting a colony on Mars or something like that?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. So the floating cities on Venus are definitely farther off, but it's incredible the amount of momentum that can be developed and progressed through the research literature, the science fiction, and um, e- everything in between. Um, I think when we start talking about Mars and establishing, a permanent presence on Mars, it's much more realistic um, currently with the current technology because there are these like the winds on Venus. They circle the planet with like 330 to 50 mile per hour winds, and so there's a lot of technical design challenges there in terms of deployment and operations, and then the lack of hydrogen too and water. Um, but as long as you have all the elements, so the surface of Mars, it's that's also considered the second most habitable planet, and in terms of the progress of Mars, we have SpaceX and Elon and the Mars Society, Dr. Robert Zubrin, and all these other um, millions and tens of millions of humans that are really everyone's kind of figuring out more and more about how all the pieces fit together, and it's really amazing. It's like a symphony trying to put everything together in your own mind, and then seeing other people put it together, and then you realize the more you dig deeper, it's like, wow, we're totally capable of putting humans and life and supporting life on the surface of Mars, and we have been the past half century, but there's been a lot of roadblocks along the way in terms of politics and cost. So
Because one of the things you mentioned when we were talking before we started recording was you said there's a lot of things happening on the moon right now. It's insane the amount of things that are happening. And I was not aware that much of anything was happening on the moon, to be honest. So, do you want to sort of elaborate for myself and those listening, sort of what sorts of projects are, I'll say, common, or just correct maybe some common misunderstandings you think people have of what countries and companies are doing up in space right now?
yeah, um, we have everything with NASA and Artemis in their Moon to Mars program. There are billions of dollars of funds being allocated toward that project and designing the vehicles and habitats um, to sustain humans on the moon. I think they're initially aiming for 2024 human arrival, but that'll likely be pushed back to 26 or 28. And then you have ESA, the European Space Agency, is doing a lot of amazing stuff, and a lot of the Chinese and the Roscosmos, Russian Space Agency, united to build this lunar base at the South Pole, and you have billions of dollars being invested toward establishing a long-term presence, specifically at the lunar South Pole, and then the North Pole too, but much more concentration on the South Pole. And this insane idea of excavating, mining, and processing the billions of tons of water ice on the moon is it's gotten legs, and it's picking up, and it's going to start flying soon. And before we know it, there will be these a lot of humans on the moon, and we'll look up at that rock in the sky, which was formerly called Theia, and collided with Earth, and we'll look up and think of the humans up there, and we'll look at it completely differently, and it'll be beautiful. And then that water ice is going to directly support the life in Earth orbit, and on the moon, and everywhere else in between, and in the inner belt. And yeah.
Interesting. I didn't realize that the mining of the water ice had picked up as much traction as it had. I remember reading an article for current events in science back in like high school or middle school that somebody had thrown that out there as an idea, and it was very quickly like, nah, like we don't have the technology for that or the money for that, or whatever reasons are typically thrown out there for why you can't do something. So what would the benefits be to that from the standpoint of we have plenty of water here, and I'm sure it would cost a lot, but what would the sort of the potential benefits from that be?
The potential benefits are enormous, and specifically in terms of the science involved, and discovering and learning more about the universe and galaxy, and identifying the exoplanets beyond our system that are the most likely to hold our future descendants. And the telescopes on the moon and on the far side of the moon, you can observe a lot more with a lot less noise from because there's no water in the moon's atmosphere to that gets in the way of observing the materials and planets out there. And then even the technology capability that's derived on the moon can be directly applied to Mars, and establishing self-sustaining biospheres out there that are, it's much less risk in terms of like a 3-day voyage with the conventional chemical propulsion systems instead of going out to Mars, and then you're stranded for a long time.
Yeah.
Yes. And a lot more.
Yeah, I'm sure it sounds incredibly complicated. One of the other things I thought was interesting that I meant to ask you, sort of human nature seems to be one of conflict, and maybe not inherently, but is obviously throughout human history, tons of conflict, wars, etc. Do you ever worry, or does it concern you about the weaponization of space and that sort of whole conversation that will need to be had once we get up to, like, maybe not floating cities, but once we get people up on the moon or up on Mars? And if well, I'll get your thoughts on that first, and then we can go talk about the Space Force. But um,
Okay.
but does that concern you at all?
No, the weaponization of space does not concern me, um, in 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 the slightest. I think to some extent, sci-fi has exacerbated um, the weaponization of space from a lot of the movies and TV shows. I think that um, the weaponization of space, it depends how you classify what a weapon is and the intent involved. But any party engaging in that malicious activity, will be able to monitor it, and it's like it'll be a detriment to their mission and vision as an organization or agency because doing things in space require like big budgets and partnerships, and and once you start weaponizing and attacking people and machines, and um, it people don't want to collaborate with you when you do that stuff. Um, and but in terms of weaponizing technology to that is holds significant value to help deter the near Earth object asteroids that those impending rocks. They're out there, and it's just a matter of time until they're on a close trajectory, and they splash down. So
I think one missed us not too long
um,
ago. Is that correct? Is that correct? The one I think one
yeah,
missed us.
they
Yeah,
fly by all the time.
yeah. So if you're not worried then about conflict up there, what do you have a strong opinion one way or another on the Space Force um, and some of the actions that the U.S. government has taken to sort of preemptively, I guess, gain sort of some sort of foothold in space?
Yeah, I generally think that I'm for the Space Force, and I love what they're doing, um, and think it's overall it's definitely positive for the space
Mhm.
economy and establishing infrastructure in orbit in other planets. I think that yes, the budgets could be spent toward more meaningful things in space, like um, developing the capability to monitor Earth's climate, um, or uh, other beneficial science missions to monitor the atmosphere and environment. Um, but I think in the long term, that will directly benefit the momentum and capability to operate large scale structures and mega structures in space, and floating habitats and cities and orbital colonies.
Good. Hopefully there will be lots of collaboration and not a lot of political, shall we say, um, roadblocks to this sort of stuff. I know we can. Yeah, I won't get into that now. um, I also know that you started we'll say, a school or academy called Mars University or MarsU. Um, and so, is the aim for this to be an actual university, or a kind of to be able to certify people in different things, or both? Or how do you sort of envision this going? Like, I don't know, 10 years from now?
Yeah, love that question. I think 5, 10 years from now, Mars University will have a research analog and education center that will uh, help enable our students and alumni to really advance their own passions and research and get hands-on experience, and that will enable that through um, people and students and young professionals who are enrolled in our um, certificate academic programs on Earth, to dedicated to making life multi-planetary. We're aiming towards short online certificates currently, and to really help people navigate and say, hey, I know I want to help out in making life flourish and improve on Mars, but I'm not quite sure how to yet, because there's so many ways that you could advance the research and then also position yourself to become an astronaut. And I think what we're doing directly supports people who are looking to find that passion and journey. So
Mm.
um, it, with the eventual goal of establishing a self-sustaining campus and to significantly improve the research around Mars settlement and exploration by orders of magnitude from our community.
Definitely,
Um,
most certifications that people know of, there's some sort of big name behind it. Like, for example, Security Plus, like CompTIA, it's a big name that everybody recognizes. Have you run into any sort of trouble, well, I'll say like gaining students because of name recognition, or sort of like maybe not being able to convince like what value would that certificate bring to me if I were to enroll? Anything like that? Like, have you sort of encountered any of that trouble sort of getting off the ground?
yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think it's a learning journey, and that those kind of collaborations and partnerships with people like like these space agencies, they take time to develop. And we're offering our first online program this summer, and so we're really just now beginning to engage with a lot of organizations and to introduce this opportunity and get people who that will back these certificate programs. And so, yeah, it's been a challenge, definitely, but I'm very confident that uh, people will see tremendous value in what we're doing, and um, yeah.
Yeah, it's a very niche field. So, like, if I were to enroll, or somebody listening wanted to enroll, what sort of value would, like you said, you're offering your first online program this summer? What sort of value would that certificate hold for me to put it on my resume?
Yeah, we're providing an industry relevant certificate, and so we plan to be recognized by a lot of agencies and well-known established corporate organizations, and so it'll help provide you with a foot in the door to uh, build a self-sustaining career around your passions, as the cost to orbit significantly drops down to tens of dollars. And um, so yeah, I forgot where I was going with that, but yeah, I think that's in a nutshell.
So, is it difficult to to develop a curriculum for something like that?
Yes, it is. It is quite difficult to develop a curriculum without funding, but um, the faculty involved, a lot of wonderful people, um, and well accomplished researchers, like Daniel Tompkins, Ilaria Sinelli, a lot of the John Clark. I could a lot of names and people, and it's difficult to coordinate sometimes. with, everyone's got so many projects going on these days. But the thing is, each faculty, they've already have, years of experience, decades of experience around this topic. So they've like pretty much prepared. They probably have like up to maybe around half of their like course developed, probably more than half. And so it'll, it comes natural to our instructors and faculty. And the other value is that, Elon wants to put 1 million people on Mars by 2050. Yeah, those numbers are like might be a bit high, but
Mhm.
it's a vision, it's a mission, and there will be thousands of people on Mars. And um, I think that there's we're fulfilling a educational gap that could be one of the largest educational gaps in the education in the US and on Earth, because it education about making life multi-planetary, it doesn't really exist currently. And so then there's so many risks and so much involved in a 2 year mission, round trip mission to Mars, that yes, spend a few $1,000s to like develop your skills and knowledge, or you jump out there, even though there will likely be these other programs from like and involved in enabling you with a skill set to live and work on Mars. um, but so yeah, I think that's the other critical gap that we're fulfilling. And I was really craving this education myself, and so I'm a poster child for this organization. Yes.
So how did you go about like finding the faculty and then finding the faculty when you had nothing to show for it, kind of you're like, hey, I need you to take this leap. And then two, how did you go about deciding, which one you were going to offer first, or was that just a function of which faculty was on board first?
Yeah, mostly, it kind of came natural. Everyone is like, hey, this person is like would be great. And they'd be great at teaching Mars agriculture, or about geology, or about the human factor involved, and the 3D printing and robotics. These people just suggested colleagues and friends, and I initially just started calling people and say, hey, we need help, and and eventually, day after day, hour after hour, you know uh I don't know, key after mouse click, it came together, and it's really come a long way in the past 16 months.
Good, that's awesome. Hopefully, I think under the assumption that things will take off the way you and Elon and others are describing, I think that'll be a very important thing for people um, moving forward. Definitely. I think. Let's see, what was the last one you had? Did we touch on all four already, or is there one more?
There's another one, biofrequency analytics was the last one.
Yes, yes,
um,
yes. So you've got the last business. It deals more with biometrics and bioanalytics, which on the surface looks like has not so much to do with your other passions, but as you described to me earlier, definitely has some space undertones. Um, so for those listening, you want to sort of describe what that business does, what the purpose of it is, and then sort of where you hope to see that one as well.
yes, yeah. um Started around uh 5 months ago, around um, November of 2020.
Mm-hmm.
And it was after my mother Nadia, she discovered this breakthrough biotechnology called AO scan. And it's essentially a software, and it's a digital and voice body analysis software that can remotely and non-invasively monitor thousands of human biomarkers, over like 1,500 biomarkers in the span of uh, a few minutes from short audio files and the digital imprint of the human body. And it's so they scan around 120,000 frequencies in the human body. And because we're oscillating, every cell in our body oscillates at a predetermined frequency, and we can monitor those frequencies as they fluctuate over time from disease, stress, or emotion. Those there's that numerical value that can be determined from the bioresonance and biorecognition and comparison process that's occurs in the back of the brain, and so we can compare the nominal frequencies with those standardized human rife frequencies with what they're actually resonating at, and then determine a numerical value from that comparison and difference, and then derive just about any biological uh, biomarker and the inflammation or overuse of that particular biomarker. And so when I refer to biomarker, we're talking about like um, the health and status of your organs, um, the cells involved in your organs, your blood, your whether you have sufficient amino acids, whether your blood count levels are aligned, whether you know the blood arteries and vessels in your head or throughout your body, your lymphatic system, your whether you've been exposed to heavy metals, toxins, fungus, parasites, even food allergies, just about anything. We can monitor all of that in the span of like a few minutes, and like like if I had a few more information about you, I could monitor exactly what you've been exposed to, like in the environment from your food and surrounding, and so that potential and capability inspired the creation of biofrequency analytics to come in and say, hey, there's so much data here that's just sitting there, and it's just sitting in a database, not being used, and so we're Biofrequency Analytics um, is a U.S. biotechnology company and research organization that is we're providing a few services, but we're offering these free scans to scan people and help them learn more about their health, about this data involved, and then also to um, say, hey, like, let's democratize access to this data. Let's give it out to people. Let's give it out to people in Africa, people who really could significantly benefit from, you know, their food and diet deficiencies and everything else. And so we're also collaborating on 3 active research projects with a lot of researchers, and we're remotely monitoring analog astronauts at analog research stations around Earth, um, and actually validating this data and verifying it and comparing it to the existing more traditional reliable methods like blood testing, MRIs, and others. And so we're really introducing this into the scientific and research literature to really help also build a community around this capability in data, and then analyze that data and then provide it to researchers. Um, so I'm, I'm going off, but with the eventual vision and goal to introduce this biotechnology and software to space agencies, and to really become the primary digital body and voice analysis software of the astronaut population throughout the solar system.
No, you're good. Definitely. Like that's what we're here for. The more details the better, for sure, definitely. Um, how do you juggle all 4 of these sorts of projects or businesses? You only have so much time in the day, but somehow you're managing to juggle them all. And you mentioned that you've got other stuff on the side that you don't even that's still going on. So how do you juggle all that with like, how do you balance your time?
Yeah, I really don't, it's just like I'll just, one deadline after the other, and it's just um I have time management problems, yes. But it comes together because they're found upon lifelong passions, and so you just passively work on each project as the thoughts come to mind, because it's really important to conceptualize and organize those thoughts into this digital world, because once you recognize that your thoughts are like around a project or research, that's when and you build up those research or those projects over time. That's where there's the value confounds and really exponentially increases in terms of what you're doing. Um, and so as long as you're able to identify exactly what it is that you're thinking about, that and then but the key is to know when to commit, um, in terms of like research or a project, because I think that's really and I always say that, like, commit early, commit. Entrepreneurship is it's really difficult, and everything I'm doing is self-funded and volunteer based, and but as long as you put enough time and passion and effort and money into what you're doing, um, you can accomplish anything. So
For sure. How do you know, like, for example, like when you were in Southeast Asia, you had the I want to start the Journey Foundation, and then you had Space Frontier. How do you know, like, or how long do you sort of toy around with an idea before you're like, yep, I want to start a business revolving this one, or what sort of I'll use criteria because it's probably the simplest thing to conceptualize. But what sort of criteria does the idea have before you're like, yep, this is good enough to sort of run with it?
yeah, there's not much criteria involved, to be honest. It's kind of like, hey, this is a really good idea. It gets me excited, and uh, I'm just start working on it, and the next day I just go at it and see. I just paper and then but then the important part is to have that passion to work on it continuously over the next days, and if you have that passion to to continuously work on it, then then you're golden. And uh yeah, I don't know. I struggle with answering that question myself, because you never know, really.
Mhm.
You never know when is the right
Surely,
time.
yeah, surely you've had ideas though that you've been passionate about, and then you've not started a business based off it. So sort of like what the difference between like your idea for MarsU versus something else, like what is it, the amount of passion that you hold for that idea, or like or is it a feasibility and like practicality sort of thing, or
Yeah, it's definitely a measure of passion. That's really what it comes down to. And you ask yourself, hey, like, can I commit the rest of my life toward this project? And if you say yes, you should just do it. um, and I feel comfortable, saying that to everything and all the companies that we've helped start. Um, so
that's good. So what if somebody listening was on the fence about starting their own business in whatever field or industry, and was looking for maybe a piece of advice about whether it's um, whether it's sort of like the logistics of it, or making like getting funding or making connections for starting their own business. What sort of advice would you have for those people as far as like the networking and the logistics of starting your own business?
yeah, I think um, there are kind of two different philosophies in life, and one of my life philosophies is that uh, follow follow impact and passion over money. Uh, and that's kind of what underpins a lot of my projects that we're working on. Um, but that's because I'm in a fortunate situation to sustain myself financially. I'm living with my parents. I'm 25, and I feel completely comfortable with that. Um, and I'm in no rush. I think but the piece of advice I would say to you listening would be, um, don't be afraid to fail, and don't you know and uh, just kind of get out there and kind of uh, I don't know. Uh, yeah, you just can't be afraid to fail, and you just don't ever give up, because what you're thinking about is highly possible. And yeah, I could have thought of something better,
No,
but
that's good. It seemed like it took that sort of seemed like that sort of advice took you to a spot that maybe you heard somebody told you that when you were first starting out.
yeah, what also resonated with me was that entrepreneurship, it's you start out, um, and you think about, hey, your first company is likely uh, not going to significantly take off, right? And so entrepreneurship is sometimes about testing those waters, and then if a project doesn't take off, recognize when to move on. I've certainly had a fair share of projects that they just down the toilet. But and then but then, like, getting out there and asking, say, hey, who's interested in this, and who's willing to pay for this? Who's and putting yourself into those shoes and positions and conversations, just fearlessly. And because I think now is, but like, it's such an amazing time for entrepreneurship, just to, in terms of getting, like, meeting people, building teams, meeting strangers who are, like, well experienced. You can meet um, a lot of people, and
Mhm.
put together teams rapidly, and it's incredible. So I think we'll definitely look back on this time and think about COVID, and we'll think about, wow, like, this COVID actually significantly improved human society, and and how we operate, and then also on the entrepreneurship that kind of, and research projects, and how many projects everyone was working on it. I think it significantly just exponentially increased during COVID, because we have more times on our hands, and recognize that we can passively work toward projects, and that don't necessarily need, like, firm time commitments. So
Yeah, definitely those fortunate enough to sort of keep our jobs
yes.
definitely have more time. Like we've lost the commute, so that's probably on average I would say probably about 2 hours a day for most people, if not more. Um, you mentioned something about meeting new people. Have you heard of Lunch Club?
Yeah, I have. Yes. Yeah.
So I had Andrew Newman, who was on the podcast in episode 15, I think it was. Um, he founded this app called By the People, which for is basically like a political candidate running in like a local sort of election would be able to go on and put their platform on and then schedule meetings with their constituents, sort of like town hall style, without the sort of roadblocks potentially of physical spaces or getting licenses to do certain things. They can just meet face to face like this. You can ask them questions and all sorts. And so one of the things that helped him was Lunch Club and getting those sorts of connections to get their app off the ground. So I made an account. I haven't really used it yet, but do you use it or not really?
Yes, yeah. I was introduced around maybe a few months ago, early 2021, and I think that it's incredible when you start thinking of these software and applications that will be around for a long time that fulfill a need. I think Lunch Club, yeah, it's one of them that's going to be with us for decades, centuries, or just that concept of human interaction, meeting people seamlessly.
Yeah. There's
And
something.
it's really
No, go ahead. Keep going.
who are you saying?
No, go ahead. Keep going.
It's okay. Lunch Club can really be used in so many ways, and I think we'll see a lot of business models stem off of Lunch Club, as you were saying, because it could be applied to every or most industries and fields in terms of like the space community and uniting humans that are passionate about similar things and researchers and football and all these separate niches, and it's also a superb way to meet people in a city you want to travel to and live in.
Hmm.
um, because you can choose and meet dozens of people before arriving, or hundreds of people, and then you have this network of like, wow, this is a great way to like find a job.
Yeah,
you know
definitely. I
yeah.
think there's something to be said though for that face-to-face human interaction, the in-person. That I know definitely some people are missing during COVID, but there are definitely people who are like yourself and others who are thriving in this time. I think moving forward, hopefully, like you were saying, I think human society will be better for this. I hope that that's the case, because I hope that businesses and people in decision like with this decision making authority will realize that hey, some people might be better working from home, and some people might be better in this way or that way, while others might want to be in the office. And so hopefully there will be some more balance, and hopefully we'll see some sort of improvement in mental health. I think as a society, but I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, I definitely I think so and believe so. And yeah, a lot of I don't know, a lot of downs, but a lot of ups too. So
Definitely. So what's next for you going forward? If you had to plot out sort of the next, we'll say like I don't know, 3 to 5 years. Where do you hope your projects will be? Where do you hope you will be? What sort of where do you think you'll be at?
uh, so wonderful question. um you're asking a lot of great questions. It's kind of to be determined. I'm working day by day, and I think I will likely relocate somewhere that we would likely um, establish a I don't know, yeah, I'll eventually relocate somewhere. We're looking to establish a long-term campus and research facilities. And I'm pretty passionate. I'm really passionate about traveling, and uh, that there's always that back of the mind, drop everything and just go cycle across the country, and so that's been in the back of my mind for a few years now. And so one day I'm just going to keep on riding and go and just travel across the US and live in California for a few months or years, and then whatever US city or else in the world, a lot of things to be done and seen and explored. So we'll see. Time shall tell.
Sounds good. I think, well, we'll get all the links to all your stuff in the description. Journey Foundation, Space Frontier, the bioanalytics, and MarsU. We'll get all that stuff down in the description. Um, any final thoughts or tidbits before we wrap this up?
Yeah, man, love what you're doing with the podcast. I think keep it up. It's got a lot of legs, and I think it could really become something meaningful. And I I hope to one day play soccer sometime.
I'm sure. Hopefully, yeah. Hopefully, the podcast sorts of. I don't know. It's on its own path. I don't really have that much of a just going where it takes me, but you never know. You never know. Well, I appreciate your time, Kole. It's been a pleasure. Definitely learned a lot about space stuff that I didn't know before. And hopefully, well, when MarsU or something takes off, we'll get you back on, and you can show us your, great new campus and all the research facilities. You can even record from there or something like that.
Yes, that would be a dream come true right now. Yes, I look forward to that day.
Sounds good. Bye, everybody.
All right. Thank you.